After the release of SICKO SANCTUM Megahecks, I'm excited to move on to the next thing. Not even a week after its launch, I decide to enroll in a game jam with some of my friends. The game we decide to make is SICKO SANCTUM 2. Once again, SICKO SANCTUM 2 is a score attack movement shooter. And while being impressive for only making it in 24 hours, it sucks. For months, I try and fail to make a new game. After going through 5 ideas, one of them being an enhanced version of SICKO SANCTUM 2 with my buddy Joey, I feel like I'm at a dead end. So I feel like games are no longer a good use of my time. Instead, I decide I should just dedicate myself to reading a range of philosophy. Fast forward to the summer of 23. I, for a weekend with my buddy William, go up to the Finger Lakes. We hike, we hang, and we watch YouTube on the television. Now, bear with me. One of the things we watch is Slavoj Žižek's philosophical movie, A Pervert's Guide to Ideology. Admittedly, some of the philosophy I was into at the time was a bit of a mixed bag. Though what resonates with me from that movie to this day is Žižek's idea of progress. To Žižek, progress wasn't just medicinal advancement, but it also came in the form of the evolution of something such as military marches to concerts. It's the fact that these mass gatherings that we need went from politically motivated marches to absurd and manufactured spaces such as concerts. That's advancement. This idea that art is human and art can sometimes mean progress made me rethink my relationship with my art. So I decided to work on SICKO SANCTUM 2 again. This time, I have the help of Wayward Wisp to do the soundtrack, and I decide to incorporate philosophy into the game. So, I made lore. You play as a bioengineered soldier called a baller. They're called ballers because of the ships they drive. The baller you play as has no name. So to make this clear, we're gonna call them Steve. The name Steve is completely non-canon. Steve is different than other ballers. Other ballers are trying to annihilate the planet so that the decrepit Terra humans, bioengineered leaders from a long-gone utopia, can reclaim power over the entire planet. Steve, on the other hand, was salvaged by humans, reprogrammed, and upgraded. Now, with Steve's newfound power, they're the only hope to end the apocalypse. Steve begins on the desert sand among the corpses of war tools. In the distance, atop a mountain, stands the Chaos Cradle. The Chaos Cradle is an obelisk that creates ballers. This is where Steve must go if they want to reach the Terra humans. So, Steve ascends the mountain, on the way encountering a typical human outpost and a baller. Steve enters the Chaos Cradle, slays some creatures, and descends to the core of the planet. Around them can be seen the remnants of the lost utopia. Some of these remnants should be familiar. Steve goes even deeper, entering the final stage, which consists of an ominous yellow ball encapsulated by a sea of flesh. This ominous yellow ball is actually a biocomputer that was created to protect the planet from devastating solar radiation from the center of the Milky Way. The Terra humans are using this god computer in order to wage war on the top of the planet from below. However, they're shy. So instead of showing themselves, they just send a baller and a rainbow golem to stop Steve. Steve, of course, wins, and the Terra humans are stopped. Though no baller, not even Steve, is a being of peace. Steve could not exist in the New World Order. So, the God computer sends them away to the SICKO Sanctum. The SICKO Sanctum is a domain where Steve can spend infinity doing what they were programmed to do: violence. Inspired by Žižek's idea, the theme is about using manufactured spaces to augment human nature. Steve's an exaggerated stand-in for humans, and the SICKO Sanctum is an exaggerated stand-in for manufactured spaces. In this way, it's meant to depict the SICKO Sanctum as a viable way for Steve to augment their nature. However, there's a big catch with this story. It's not really in the game. Only the world carries its influence. SICKO SANCTUM 2's inspiration for its world comes from French science fiction artist Mobius and the Panzer Dragoon franchise of video games. I resonate with both for their depiction of futuristic yet corroding alien worlds. The story in particular shares massive beats with 1998 JRPG Panzer Dragoon Saga. Both games have evil powers who are trying to revitalize ancient technology and obelisks that serves as portals to a deeper power. Now, I didn't even notice that I did this until writing this script, and so in retrospect I do feel I took too much from Panzer Dragoon Saga. With these references, it's finally time to make SICKO SANCTUM 2. The plan is to add the tail, polish the gameplay loop, and of course implement the new soundtrack. I intend to only spend 4 months on it so I can continue on to something new. Development at first is amazing. Despite being a full-time student, I'm also working on the game full-time. I remake the art, I make new enemies, I introduce new mechanics, I remake even more art, and now it's 2024. I become burnt out. So I take a 3 months break to eventually return to remaking more art. At this point, I already just want to be done with SICKO SANCTUM 2. With the exception of a playable tutorial, I throw out all previous plans that hadn't already been implemented into the game. That includes the story, a final boss, and a hub world, and more. The SICKO SANCTUM 2 that happened is very different than the one that was planned. So what is SICKO SANCTUM 2? SICKO SANCTUM 2's design all along suited gameplay. It's a game for fun, and it's a game for the fun of the violence and the virtual violence of that's fun, and frankly, not to toot my own horn, I think I did a good job. I crafted SICKO SANCTUM 2 with Ultra Kill and Hyper Demon in mind first and foremost. Both are fast-paced, inventive movement shooters with an emphasis on synergies between the player's moveset and enemies. This design philosophy is at the forefront in SICKO SANCTUM 2. You can parry just about any enemy projectile, you can explode drone bombs, you can use the melee enemy as a step stool, and more. I took it a step further, however, by implementing a Devil May Cry inspired style system that directly links to the player's speed and damage output. By using a diversity of synergistic moves, you build up style. Getting enough style allows you to level up. Leveling up is how you do more damage and increase your speed. Therefore, by playing the game in dynamic and interesting ways, you gain power. And by gaining power, you win. That's some designed game right there. Enemies are diverse on their own, but they can also interact with one another. This is important as enemies are the only challenge in the game. So your actions are almost entirely dictated by what combination of enemies is on the board. In fact, the core of SICKO SANCTUM 2's design entirely is the enemies, as they are both the entirety of the challenge, but also the entirety of how the player becomes strong. You need to balance the risk of doing synergy moves, which might lead to taking damage and losing style, with the reward of the inherent benefit of using synergy moves with all the damage they deal, along with the style buff they give you. This push and pull creates a lot of tension as you progress. Do not get it twisted. There are issues. The progression system in the game doesn't exist. The one thing I probably could have done to mitigate this is add a global leaderboard, but when I was getting to the point of when I was going to add that feature, the amount of work I would have to do to reprogram the game, because I am a beginner, just to make it like cheater proof was just like insane. So sadly, that's not there. Regardless, I think I succeeded at creating unique yet focused gameplay. For being a game developer for only 3 years, that is a great place to be. So the gameplay from concept to execution came out as intended, if not better. The atmosphere and the world, on the other hand, however, are very different. If anything, the atmosphere of SICKO SANCTUM 2 is informed by the absence of the story. It is as if you traverse the game through the eyes of Steve. You see a world that has happened. In front of you are endless enemies. You don't know why you're there. You don't know why the enemies are there. All you can do is follow your predetermined purpose. When some of my friends played tested the game, they didn't see that the stages connected. I thought it was obvious in the first 3 because certain elements are present between all of them. However, the game's very fast-paced nature kind of mitigates that. So while I do wish things were more outwardly connected, I would still like to think though that what is there is interesting and connected enough for some people who play to start asking questions. Even though the lengths in which I dedicated myself to my inspirations admittedly makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm still proud of the art that came out of it. I still had certain touches that were my own, such as the amount of colors in an enemy corresponding to how powerful they were. The world that I made is unique, varied, and at times striking. It might be a bit amateurish, though it's certainly something. After loads of remaking and polishing and bug fixes, SICKO Sanctum 2 in November of 2024 finally goes gold. First, I need to take a few sentences to mention if it weren't for the extensive bug testing from Wayward Wisp, SICKO Sanctum 2 would have launched as buggy as a Bethesda game. Legitimately, the efforts they made into breaking the hell out of my game did so much to make it just function. So this is just credit where credit is due and a thank you. Anyways, I launched the Steam page and a trailer with the release date slated for December 27th, 2024. Release day comes and I hold a party with my friends. Things were nice. We got Wingstop, we played games, and while everyone was still there, the game released. I did not feel ecstatic or excited. If anything, I was just happy it was over. Feeling that way spawned a sense of unease in me. I knew SICKO Sanctum 2 was my greatest accomplishment. Why didn't I feel that way? For only 4 months of development out of the year and a half did I actually resonate with making SICKO Sanctum 2. This means for the year following the 4 months in which I was passionate for the game, I honestly wanted to do other things. It is normal for artists to sometimes have trouble finishing what they started, though I'd reckon laboring at your art for 3 times the amount of time you actually spent enjoying it is some deep shit. Okay, so I'm gonna need you to bear with me here. This section's a bit more like out there. The state of self-expression today is unprecedented. Everyone has access to an abundance of knowledge through the internet, and anyone has accessibility of expression in the matter of seconds on social media. This abundance of knowledge and accessibility of expression is empowering. However, it's also overwhelming. In fact, it seems rather than empowering us, it consumes us. I feel this is because the abundance of knowledge and accessibility of expression have led to such an excess of themselves that discourse and expression on the internet no longer reflects material reality. Rather, it has become so all-encompassing it only has basis in itself. When I was originally conceptualizing SICKO Sanctum 2, I was searching for myself in this abundance of knowledge. I thought I was exempt from the evils of the internet because I was reading like 100-year-old philosophical essays. I thought that philosophers were the creators of subjects, the questioners. Surely they could help me find myself. I honestly thought I did find myself when I realized I could combine my passions of game development and philosophy together. However, this was arrogant. As time went by, I realized philosophy could never inform me of myself. When I realized that, that's when I became burnt out of SICKO Sanctum 2. When I looked into the mirror of my life's work, it produced no reflection. 1 year later, I understand why. SICKO Sanctum 2 is consumed by the abundance of knowledge and the accessibility of expression. Knowledge in the form of inspirations from Zizek, Panzer Dragoon, Mobius, Hyperdemon, Ultra Kill, and more. Then accessibility of expression in the form of resources on the internet about how to make games and platforms of which I can publish the game or market it. I was so infatuated by these resources, I forgot my link to material reality. In fact, the 4 months of development I enjoyed were because it let me be away from material reality. Ultimately, SICKO Sanctum 2 is not an expression of myself because SICKO Sanctum 2 doesn't express myself. Rather, it's merely an endorsement of my inspirations. I understand now it doesn't need to be this way. When expression has basis in material reality or lived experience or whatever words you want to use for that, the abundance of information and accessibility of expression from the internet can be tools of empowerment. It's important that the internet, rather than consuming expression, informs its means. What I learned is that rather than being consumed by infinite information, it's important we reconnect to material reality, reconnect to our emotions, and reconnect to empathy so we can heal from what's been inflicted to us and all of us. I also feel that as we live in a time that is beyond words, art has an essential place in reconnecting us, as art is communication beyond words. So here we are. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I titled this video, I made SICKO SANCTUM 2 because I just have difficulty processing I actually made it. But I want to mention that, like, in reality, art, especially art as big as this, is not an individualistic thing. I would like to thank Sean Tarantella for doing all of the voice acting, and Wayward Wisp again for the bug fixing and soundtrack. It might be cliche to say this, but I could not have done this without you guys. I also need to mention that there would be no SICKO SANCTUM 2 if it weren't for my beautiful friends and family. I made SICKO SANCTUM 2, but you guys made me. If you want, you can buy a SICKO SANCTUM 2 from Steam for $7.99. But honestly, this video is like more fulfilling, more gratifying, more me than that, so I don't really care. If you want to support me, then leave a like on this video and subscribe, I guess. All right, well, that's it. Thanks again, everyone. Goodbye. Bye-bye.